I stood in front of the mirror in the staff locker room at the Grand Meridian Hotel, adjusting the black vest over my crisp white shirt. The name tag pinned to my chest read Emily, not my real name, but close enough that I'd remember to respond to it. My hands trembled slightly as I smoothed down the apron tied around my waist. I'd never done anything like this before. I was a marketing director, for heaven's sake, not a waitress, but desperate times called for desperate measures. My husband Mark had been acting strange for the past 3 months. Late nights at the office, hushed phone calls he'd taken another room, a new cologne I'd never bought him, the classic signs, I suppose, but I'd tried to ignore them. We'd been married for 6 years. 6 good years, I thought, until 3 weeks ago, when I found the invitation tucked into his coat pocket, Lexington Corp Annual Holiday Gala, employee-only event. That's what it said. Employee only. No spouses, no plus ones. Mark worked at Lexington Corp as a senior financial analyst. He'd told me about the party, of course, said it was mandatory attendance, purely professional, boring as hell. I believed him at first. But then I noticed he'd gotten his hair cut, bought a new suit, started going to the gym religiously. Men don't do that for a boring work event. My best friend Rachel worked for an event staffing company. One phone call, and I had myself a job serving champagne at the very party my husband insisted I couldn't attend. I told Mark I was going to visit my sister in Boston for the weekend. He seemed almost relieved. The manager's voice crackled through the locker room speaker. All servers to your stations. Doors open in 5 minutes. I took a deep breath, grabbed my serving tray, and headed out. The ballroom was stunning. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting warm golden light across the room. Round tables draped in white linen surrounded a central dance floor. A jazz quartet was setting up in the corner. Everything looked elegant, expensive, exactly the kind of event that would have been nice to attend on my husband's arm, if I'd been invited. I positioned myself near the bar, where I'd have a good view of the entrance. The guests began arriving in clusters, laughing, greeting each other warmly. I recognized some faces from Mark's office parties in years past, back when spouses were welcome. Sarah, from accounting, waved at someone across the room. James, from IT, grabbed a glass of wine from my tray without even looking at me. That was the thing about being a server. You became invisible, which was exactly what I needed tonight. Mark arrived 20 minutes later, and my breath caught in my throat. He looked handsome, more handsome than I'd seen him look in months. The new suit fit him perfectly. His hair was styled with that expensive pomade I'd noticed in our bathroom. He was smiling, that broad, genuine smile I used to see all the time when we first met. But he wasn't smiling at me. He was smiling at someone behind him. She walked in a moment later, and I felt my stomach drop. She was young, maybe 27 or 28, long dark hair swept up in an elegant twist, a red dress that hugged her curves perfectly. She touched Mark's arm as they walked in together, laughing at something he'd said. I gripped my serving tray so hard my knuckles turned white. "Champagne?" I managed to say as they passed near me. Mark took a glass without even glancing my way. The woman, I needed to know her name, smiled politely and shook her head. "I'm not drinking tonight," she said, her hand briefly touching her stomach. A gesture so quick I almost missed it. But I didn't miss it. My mind was racing. Not drinking. Touching her stomach. The way Mark looked at her. I moved closer, pretending to collect empty glasses from a nearby table. I heard Mark introduce her to a colleague. "This is Jessica, our new senior accountant. She's been instrumental in the restructuring project." Jessica. So that was her name. The evening progressed like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I watched them circulate the room together. They didn't touch much in public, but there was an intimacy in the way they stood close to each other, the way Mark leaned in when she spoke, the way her eyes lit up when he told a joke. Other colleagues clearly knew something. I saw the knowing glances, the smirks. Tom from legal walked up to them at one point, clapped Mark on the shoulder, and said something that made Mark turn red. Jessica just smiled serenely. I served drinks, cleared plates, and played my role perfectly while my heart shattered into smaller and smaller pieces. Around 8 o'clock, the CEO stood up to make a toast. Everyone gathered around with their champagne glasses. I stationed myself near Mark and Jessica's table, close enough to hear every word. I want to thank everyone for their hard work this year, the CEO began. We've had some significant changes, some restructuring, and I know it hasn't always been easy. But I'm particularly proud of the work Mark Henderson and Jessica Rivera have done together. Mark, Jessica, would you stand up? They stood, and the room applauded. I felt like I might be sick. The CEO continued, "Their dedication to the Ashton account has been remarkable. Long hours, weekends, late nights, they've really gone above and beyond as a team. To Mark and Jessica." "To Mark and Jessica," the room echoed. But it was what happened next that made my blood run cold. As everyone drank and the CEO sat down, Tom from legal raised his glass again, louder this time, clearly having had a few too many drinks. "And here's to the happy couple, Mark and Jessica. When's the wedding, you two?" The room went silent for a beat. Then some people laughed awkwardly. Others quickly changed the subject. But Jessica and Mark exchanged a look I'd seen pass between us 1,000 times during our marriage. A look of understanding, of shared secrets, of love. I had to get out of there. I placed my tray on the nearest table and walked quickly toward the service corridor, ignoring the confused look from my supervisor. In the empty hallway, I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving. The wedding. He was planning to marry her. Which meant he was planning to divorce me. My Mark. My husband of 6 years. The man who'd promised to love me forever. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe 5 minutes, maybe 15. But gradually, the shock began to fade, replaced by something else. Anger. White-hot, clarifying anger. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not here, not now. I'd come here for the truth, and I'd gotten it. But I wanted more than the truth. I wanted them to know that I knew. I wanted to see the look on Mark's face when he realized his careful deception had crumbled. I composed myself, fixed my hair, and walked back into the ballroom. Dinner was being served. I deliberately took the tray designated for Mark and Jessica's table. As I approached, Mark was leaning close to Jessica, whispering something that made her giggle. I set the plates down in front of them with steady hands. "Your dinner," I said, my voice clear and calm. Mark glanced up, and for a moment, nothing registered. Then his eyes met mine. Really met mine. I saw the exact second recognition hit him. His face went completely white. His mouth opened, then closed. Jessica looked between us, confused. "Emma?" Mark's voice was barely a whisper. "Hello, darling," I said, my voice sweet as honey and sharp as a knife. "Fancy meeting you here at this employee-only event." Jessica's eyes widened. "Emma? As in, your wife, Emma?" I smiled at her. "That would be me. And you must be Jessica. I've heard so much about you." "Well, actually, I haven't heard anything about you. My husband failed to mention he had such a close working relationship with someone, especially someone he's apparently planning to marry." People at the nearby tables had stopped eating, were watching us now. Mark stood up so quickly his chair fell backward. "Emma, this isn't... You don't understand." "Don't I?" I kept my voice level, but loud enough for people to hear. "Let me tell you what I understand. I understand that my husband has been lying to me for months. I understand that he's been having an affair with his colleague. I understand that she's pregnant. Yes, Jessica, I noticed you weren't drinking. And I understand that he's apparently planning to leave me for her. Did I miss anything?" Jessica's hand flew to her stomach, her face pale. Mark reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "Emma, please, not here. Let's talk outside." "Why not here?" I asked. "These are your friends, your colleagues, the people who've clearly known about this for months while I've been kept in the dark. Why shouldn't they hear the truth? Or were you planning to keep lying? Tell them we got divorced quietly? Maybe say I was unstable or demanding or whatever story you've concocted?" "It's not like that," Mark said desperately. "I was going to tell you. I just needed to figure out the right time." "The right time?" I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. "When would that have been, Mark? When she was in the delivery room? When you moved out? Or were you just going to let me figure it out on my own?" Jessica stood up now, her voice shaking. "I didn't know he was still married. He told me you were separated, that the divorce was almost final. He showed me papers." I looked at her, and despite everything, I felt a flat